Yes, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to our usual Thursday conscientism class where we discuss philosophy and ideology. Not the liberal kind, not the conservative kind, but the progressive kind. The progressive kind that puts the welfare of the people ahead of everything else, because the welfare of the people is the supreme law. So we discuss what we would call progressive Pan-Africanism. And that's a philosophy and ideology that we study on Thursdays, which we wish to share with the world. The current stalemate in the progression of Africa is down to our state of mind. And our state of mind is down to the fact that we are not motivated by the correct philosophy and ideology that will enable us to take the steps that we need in order to liberate, unite, and develop the continent. Our leaders, liberal and conservative leaders, are preoccupied with positions in the new colonial system that is in control of the continent. That is their main preoccupation, their position, whether they should be president, vice president, and so on and so forth. In the meantime, nobody really cares about the welfare of the people. So on Thursdays, we discuss philosophy and ideology and hope that by addressing the philosophy and ideology as we do, we shall help to ignite a reconsideration amongst our people of the perspective with which they see the world and which they see the role of Africa in the world. So welcome, everyone. And those of you who are going to be watching on YouTube, welcome also to our class. We normally read, and Brother Pigeon has highlighted what we read on the screen. And once we've read, one of us will read. We normally take it in turns to read. Once we have read, we shall then go around and ask everyone to share their thinking, not what they feel, not what they opine, meaning their opinion, but rather what they are thinking, because I think there's a saying that the weapon in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we want to liberate the minds of our people from the hands of the oppressor. And the oppressor is imperialism and neocolonialism, which is the tool of imperialism. So welcome. As I said, we shall read and then we share our thinking and we go around. In the process, as I'll be sharing, I will be asking you questions so that you can make your thinking even clearer, not only to yourself, but to us who are listening to you, and make it a kind of philosophical dialogue, which, as you know, is a tradition that goes way back into the origins of the African origin of civilization, and how our great grandparents had discussions. So the highlighted section is the one we are going to read. Before I continue, let me welcome once again our sister Chizomo, our sister Myra, our brother Carrington, our sister Tapua, our brother Sam, and our brother Pigeon. Brother Carrington is our resident physicist. And what it means is that wherever we have arguments over physical theory, he is the one that would adjudicate based on mainstream physics as opposed to fringe physics. So welcome everyone. Welcome once again. Now I'm going to proceed to read, and once I've read, I'll ask you to share your thinking. When we read very slowly so that people can follow the reading and also be thinking through the reading as we proceed. So here I go. The preceding early Greek philosophers were so bent on destroying the foundations of priestly aristocratic power that they paid little attention to social growth. They were so wrapped in their purposes that they also jibed at the immortality of the soul. Socrates, being the first Greek philosopher to make the immortality of the soul a tenet of philosophy, as distinct from a belief of religion. According to Heraclitus, too, all things are one, but fire, the fundamental thing, suffers transformations into other things. There is a permanent potential of instability in everything. And it is this instability which makes transformations possible. Objects are only deceptively serene. They are all delicate balances of opposing forces. The opposition of forces is conceived by Heraclitus to be so fundamental that without it, everything would pass away. An object is an attunement of opposite tensions. And without the tensions, there could be no object. Full stop. So that's the reading highlighted on the screen. And when we've discussed it, we'll move on to social laws. Two are conceived. We'll read that after we've discussed this paragraph that I have just read. So let's share our thinking. Let me start with Brother Carrington.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone is okay. So we are moving.
I am very okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brother Christian.
I'm sure others are also okay.
Yes. Are there any brothers or sisters from Nigeria? I hope everything is okay in Nigeria.
Yeah, we used to. But he's not here today.
Yeah. So, we are moving from the pre-Socratics to the Socratics. The pre-Socratics, Thales, Anaximander, have very specific ideas about the nature of the universe. They are naturalists, and they believe that there is very little to be said in the physical universe for spirituality or any form of spiritualism. There's a famous one here. Democritus said, only atoms and empty space exist. The rest is opinion. So This is the group that wants to undermine, as discussed in the first part of the paragraph, they want to undermine the theological or theocratic class by their philosophy. It is not really the aim of these people or this group of philosophers to undermine. They are not political revolutionaries. Thales, for example, was part of the what you can call the rich mercantile class, the new aristocratic class. But the effect of their philosophies is the undermining of the religious order of these Greek city-states. But now we are moving now to Socrates. Socrates is a famous philosopher. We get forced to try and learn and understand his philosophies, his ethical, moral, spiritual philosophies. So Socrates tries to return the soul of the man, of the woman, of the person into the center of ethical philosophy, because this soul basically is the moral agent, right? And this soul is a fundamental aspect of humanity. Now, the Osagyefo here is trying to contrast this soul with Heraclitus, who then thinks of fire as being the fundamental thing. Although there can be arguments, of course, and there are several philosophies which make the argument for soul being a form of fire. Now, if you have watched fire, fire is always flickering, it is always disturbed, it is always in motion. And this is how Heraclitus understands the entire universe as being in motion all the time, constantly. Everything is changing everywhere all the time. And therefore, this change, of course, comes from opposing forces. Again, I'd refer to chapter 1, the dialectic. Opposing forces causing changes in society. Society snapping into one state or another state because of the contradictions of society that build up in societies. An example being Africa, as we are seeing it right now with the protests. Now, this opposition of forces, Heraclitus thinks, are so fundamental that it is not possible to define anything in the universe without understanding in any way the configuration of the forces that are operating in and on the object. It's a very interesting idea. So that is all an object boils down to, that the forces operating on it. Now, I would like to suggest to the group to start thinking about society this way. If you think about society this way, that society could be constructed, the African continent, African countries, African states, if you could understand them as a system of forces fighting in opposition, do you think it will enlighten the situation? Do you think it will help us understand what we are seeing in the continent right now with the instability, the economic instability, and the protests? Thank you.
Right. Brother Carrington. Okay, I noticed you've also focused on Socrates in that paragraph. And you also made clear that Socrates, that we're moving from the pre-Socratic philosophers, and as you said rightly, one of the big guns is Socrates, which we'll come to later. Do you think that when you say the soul is fire, can you tell us a bit more about that? When you say the soul is fire.
Thank you very much. This I have met in very casual reading, so I could be remembering things wrongly, but it is usually associated with parts of African philosophy, or what you can call theology, and Eastern theology. So Far East theology, Chinese, Indian, that the soul is a certain form of fire, a certain form of light, right? And if you take Heraclitus here, that this form of energy, it is I think it is a way of ancient philosophers, our ancestors also, trying to understand this fundamental energy of life, essentially, and modeling it as this sort of fire. Yeah. Because I have read mythologies, and please, anybody in the group, please feel free to volunteer a story in which fire is the basis of creation of human beings. And it is quite common, I think, in African mythologies. Yeah.
So from the point of view of physics, is
Yeah.
it correct to say that the source of life on our planet is fire? And by fire,
Yes,
again,
the
I mean the
sun.
sun.
The sun. Yes,
Yes.
the sun. Yeah, yeah, the sun. The sun is a big fire, essentially, a source of heat.
Right.
Heat is extremely important for life, as we all probably heat and light. Yeah, yeah.
And what is heat
Thermodynamics.
from physical
Yeah.
theory? What essentially is heat?
Heat is Heat is the change or transfer of energy from one region to another. It's a
Right.
form of radiation, right? Especially, I don't want to go into the physics too much, but this is what you call infrared radiation
Right.
as part of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Spectrum.
So it is a form of transfer of energy.
You
Yes.
see, you see why we need you in this class. So, so fire. So would you agree then that Heraclitus was essentially saying that, yes, I agree with Thales that water um, is, or could be the basis of the universe. However, there's another element, and he's moved it from water now to fire. So he is
Yes.
suggesting to us that instead of water, which some would argue, also in the end comes from what comes from fire, because if fire is the origin of life, then there's something there. So do you think that Heraclitus is now shifting our perspective from water, which is the basis of the mercantile economy, to fire, which is the basis of life itself?
Yes, I would think so. What I'm trying to understand these philosophers to be doing is looking for the atoms within their technology, within their intellect, trying to look for the atoms of the world. As you probably remember, Brother Christian, it will end up with Aristotle basically giving up on this project and saying there are four fundamental elements: fire, air, water, and earth. Right? So, and I think maybe the Osajefa will discuss this later, but if I'm not wrong, what ends up happening is that everybody is struggling to look for a fundamental element with which they can build their building blocks. Now, whether I would say Heraclitus is more correct compared to Thales, I really don't know. What I think I can say here is that in the sense that you are trying to understand energy, Heraclitus is closer. Fire is closer to the fundamental description of energy than water. Water is a level above fire, essentially, if you think about electromagnetic radiation. So you would then need to combine energy using Einstein E is equals to mc squared to create matter, then use matter, these atoms, to create water. So you could say that at a level of fundamentality, maybe heat is more fundamental compared to water. And therefore, Heraclitus could be closer. But I'm not sure that they were aware and that Heraclitus was aware that he was closer. Yeah.
So when you mentioned, and you are right, you are saying that we should look um, at Heraclitus's proposal as better than that of Thales. So you are right in that sense. So do you think that by you mentioning Aristotle in advance before we get there, are you drawing our attention to the fact that in physics or in science there are four fundamental, if you like, matter? Um, we know matter in four fundamental ways. liquid,
the states here.
the states of matter. So my question: do you think that, in a way, this is what they are grouping at?
Yes, they're trying, again, with the limits of their technology, they're trying to grope at the fundamental elements, essentially, of the universe. But since they are monists, since they think that everything comes from one thing, they try to look for that one thing and zero in on, maybe now in the case of Heraclitus, it's fire. But I think this is something that will be surrendered for a little bit by Western traditions, with Aristotle and the people who come after him, and then revived later with the atomists, who then go back to atoms. The story in physics has interestingly cycled back. I won't say cycled back completely, but a little bit, where now in physics, as you are familiar, Brother Christian, there are four fundamental forces. There's gravitation, there's the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, and electromagnetism, right? All forces in the universe boil down to these four forces, as far as the physics of our time understands. So this interesting appearance of everything trying to boil down to one and four still is an ongoing struggle in our attempt to understand the universe.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. One last point. I don't know if you're familiar with this, because it's to do with African belief. So witchcraft or wizardry in the African perspective is to do with fire. So when someone is a witch, we mean that they shine in the night. Are you familiar with that?
A bit, yeah. I'm African. Yeah.
So when we say someone is a witch or a wizard, we mean that they are able to shine in the night. And there are stories. So in the night, you see a tree far away, and you see this bird flying on the tree, and it's just light. And we are told that is a witch or that's a wizard. Are you able to throw some light on that? You don't have to.
What I would like to say is that, especially amongst the medicine men, medicine women, these clans, fire plays a very fundamental role, and this is exactly what is in the paragraph of transformation. They put these chemicals together, light them up in fire, and then whisper these incantations as they move their stuff around, and they make sure that the place where they're operating in is well lit. Okay? So for me, it could be a sense, again, our ancestors and our people right now currently practicing these things in the village. I normally resist calling it wizardry and witchcraft because of the English connotations of the word. But the people practicing this in our villages currently are also trying to grasp at this very difficult thing to touch, the fundamentality of fire.
Now, it's interesting you say that we shouldn't, you'll be reluctant for us to use the words witchcraft and wizardry.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in the Bible, there's a story of exactly that very phenomenon where Jesus, we are told, takes a few of his disciples to a mountaintop where he becomes like the sun, where he basically transforms into light.
The transfiguration, yes.
The transfiguration. Yeah. And what many people don't realize is that the transfiguration is what is sometimes called witchcraft in our culture. When somebody is like the sun and shining and flying and so on, we say, oh, it's a witch or a wizard. And actually, in the Bible, there's exactly the transfiguration, and that's exactly what is happening there. Coming back to fire.
That's That's my disagreement exactly. Why is Jesus a prophet and a son of God, and our people become wizards and witches?
Yes, precisely.
Yeah, I'm not very happy with that. Yeah,
precisely. Right. Thank you very much for sharing your thinking. The final point I want to raise with you before we move to somebody else is that some have argued, and certainly I believe that what we are reading is basically Greeks who are confused. Why is that? So they are confused in the sense that they went to the Africans to study what the universe is. And when they went to the Africans, they learned that the universe is dialectical. So it's not only just water, it's also fire at the same time. It's not just water and fire, it's also earth at the same time. It's not just water, fire, and it's not just water, fire, and earth. It's also water at the same time. That the universe basically has these four dimensions all at the same time. So when you say monism, actually monism is a dialectical phenomenon. And what the Greeks did when they came to learn, they didn't really understand it well, and then they broke it up. This person says water, Thales is saying water, Heraclitus is saying fire. But actually, what they learned from us is that is one thing, just being able to manifest itself in different ways. What would you say to that?
So there's this, I don't know whether it's Cameroonian, it's West African, of these gods of darkness and of light, yeah, and this oppositional, but also the god of darkness and the god of light are not just in opposition, they are also brothers. So these forces are operating in opposition but also in concert to give one result, or a result, the result of life, for example, on earth. There are two ways in which this could have happened. We know that from biology that everybody is African in a sense. And therefore, the usual way of oral traditions, Greek oral traditions, must be, in a sense, be derived from fundamental African stories. That's one way. The other way, Brother Christian, you are more familiar with it, of the Greeks literally trading with the Egyptians and trying to learn from the Egyptians and adapting their stories that way. Now, it could be possible that the philosophies that were formed on the basis of these old African stories end up being malformed, end up being incomplete, end up being and of course with the fact of technological difficulties, end up being mistaken in a sense, or half stories or half pictures of reality. So yes, it's a possibility. And also, I would also advance the idea that not there wasn't any African tribe, African nation that had also had the complete picture. So this story again was somehow dispersed within the continent also. This attempt of understanding our universe. And this is why I really like nowadays buying these African mythology books to try and piece back the stories and see how these stories flow from each other and they're related.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, thank you. So in terms
Yeah.
of our cultural perspective, there is something called in Akan, it's called Kunu Miriku, Denchra Miriku. Basically, it means what you've just said, which is dialectics, and that is that is an example is a crocodile with one stomach and two mouths. So the crocodiles are fighting as to who will eat the biggest, and yet they both have the same stomach. And that's the point you made about two things fighting, but they are brothers or they are sisters. They are actually fundamentally the same thing, and then they are. But then when you look at them, they appear to be fighting. So no, thank you very much for your extended sharing of your thinking. Let's now go to Sister Tapua. Can you share your thinking, please? Thank you. Satapua is not.
Sorry, did you say Satapua?
Satapua,
No,
yes.
I'm there.
You asked
Can I
Satapua.
pass? Can I pass for now, please?
You can indeed.
May I pass for now, please?
You can indeed.
Thank you.
Sister Myra.
This one's
So
a bit
sharing
difficult.
our thinking on what we've read, yeah? Not what Brother Carrington said, but what we read. Thank you.
So the first sentence, which says the Greek philosophers were so bent on their philosophies that they paid little attention to social growth. I'm wondering whether that means whatever they were developing didn't translate into social order or didn't impact the society that much. Then Heraclitus, he talks about transformations. There's instability in everything. There's instability in systems. So there are opposing forces. And then he concludes that for an object to exist, these opposing forces have to exist. If they don't, then it collapses. The only way I can think about it is by applying it to Africa, where we see dialectics throughout colonialism and neocolonialism, the wealthy metropolitan centers, the impoverished Africans, the educated and erudite Europeans, and the savage Africans that have to be civilized. And I'm wondering whether, for me, I think his way of thinking was very idealist, because it says if the opposite tensions do not exist, then there's no object. In the same way, if finally Africa becomes rich from her resources, then do they stop to exist because we're now as rich as they are? Should systems always be opposing? Should we always be at war? That's the only thing I can think about. For me, it sets up for me how they then went about. There's always an opposite to them. It's always the human and the other.
So if you return to the concept of the tension for a moment, you say that you think that Heraclitus is being idealist. Why do you say that?
Because it's the system that they've set up, and they've set it up in that it's they're wealthy, but their wealth is at the expense of the poor. Yeah,
but remember, he, like Thales, is opposing the priestly aristocracy, who are the idealists. And do you not think that fire is a material object?
It is.
So if fire is a material object, do you not think that, just like Thales, he is also making a materialist argument? It's just that the matter that he is
Go on.
Just that the matter that he is putting forward as the monistic phenomenon, that which is the source of all things, or he has posited fire as opposed to the water that Thales has said.
Agreed, because he says, but fire, the fundamental thing, suffers transformation. I think that's very, very materialist thing to say, because in materialism, we understand that there's always changes and transformations within societies and conditions. Yeah, that's very materialist.
Do you recall that in chapter 1, we came across a concept called categorical conversion?
Yes.
Do you think that when he's talking about it this way, surface transformation into other things, that means fire, surface transformation? Do you think that he's talking about the words we will use, which is categorical conversion? In other words, other things are other categories of matter. and you have
Yes, I
fire
do.
being
Yes, I do.
transformed into other categories.
Yes.
Mm.
But then I just still feel that he then departs from the materialism when he starts talking about there has to be opposite tensions all the time. Well, that means there's always a system that's going to be better off at the expense of the other. There will never be equality or egalitarianism.
So you are applying that statement to society.
Yes.
But then if you remain at the level of the thing being matter, the fundamental thing, isn't it correct that the atom has within it both positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons, and then a nucleus that has no charge?
Yes.
And that without the opposition between the charge of the, but that currently come in there if you think I'm getting it wrong. Without the opposition between the electron and the proton, the atom will not be stable. It will disintegrate.
True.
So what I'm saying is that, do you not think that, although Heraclitus is not making that very clear, do you not think that is what he's referring to when you talk about the balances of opposing forces? So in the electron, we find opposing forces, and yet that is what holds the electron together.
Okay. So yeah, I get that point. So I'm
yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say, then in nature we should expect opposing forces.
Yes, I will agree with that.
If I extend that to societies, then there will always be opposite.
Yes. So that is so what we are discussing now is called dialectics.
Yes.
And that's what we are discussing.
Yeah.
And dialectics says that everything is one. Everything is one. But within that oneness, that unity, if you like, are forces in opposition. And later on in chapter 5, we shall come to that when we look at negative forces and positive forces with respect to Africa. Negative forces being the forces that want to keep our continent under neo-colonial control, like working in a unity government. That brings in negative forces who can overwhelm you, as in South Africa. I know Brother Sam may disagree. But this happened across the continent as a whole. And then positive forces are those forces that want to liberate, unite, and develop Africa. So all the forces that are against African liberation, unification, and development are what we call negative forces. All the forces that are for African liberation, unification, and development are positive forces. So in that sense, you are right that Africa itself can be seen in those terms.
Yeah. Can I just say one last thing? Okay, so given that in nature,
don't tell me what you feel. Tell me what you think, because I know you said I feel.
Okay.
You know, I want you to tell me what you think rather than what you feel.
Given that in nature, these opposite forces exist, and then you've given an example of the negative and positive, then I think for me that then the message from this paragraph becomes that as African Pan-Africanist liberators, then our role then is to restore Africa to, first of all, increase the positive changes, and then restore Africa to the correct side of the equation, because it has been robbed from us. We are underneath and they're the top, but we need so we need to turn that upside down.
So, and therein lies our dilemma.
Yes.
Because to do that needs a lot of resources.
Yes.
A lot of hard work.
Yes.
And as we are all witnesses. Not everybody wants to do the work.
Yes.
And so, yeah, no, thank you very much for drawing attention to that. Do you want to add any final comments before?
No, that's everything.
That's yeah.
Everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Sam. If Brother Sam is not ready, we'll go to Brother Joseph.
I'm getting ready. I'm fine.
Brother Sam is ready. Brother Sam, what do you think about the paragraph we've read? And feel free to
thank you very much. And I've listened to the two speakers before, and I really can follow what they are saying. But I want to come from another angle to say, you know, I never thought I would understand this in the manner that I see it now, in the sense that this is chapter 2, I think, of the book.
Right.
And to have this important message that I'm finding, I find Kwame Nkrumah to have been very incredible. To say, here are the Greek philosophers, the early Greek philosophers, who in their haste to destroy what they thought was the obstacle of their discoveries, they sort of tend to lose track of what is actually happening. I think this is a good example for us to learn from, to say in whatever we are doing, we must always keep time and space in check so that we don't lose anything. And I think he really puts it very clear for me that even if we do anything, there's no rush into anything. They were so rapt, as he says, they even didn't see whatever developments are there. Already, Socrates was already coming up with the immortality of the soul, and they were not even aware of that aspect. And I think this is something also fundamental for us, that even in our current status and state situation, we need to study everything that we are doing and take every condition that is available in the countries that we are to be able to come up with solutions. I think for me, this is very important. And I think the other aspect I'm also finding here is that we should be able to learn from everything. They were in a haste to destroy the priestly aristocracy and the belief in religion, but they didn't learn anything out of that they could use. And I think you came very clearly when you talked about the transfiguration of Jesus, which many people, you know, in our society, especially here in South Africa, the issue of heat or light or fire being a source of not only power, but source of economy, source of transforming anything, is very fundamental. We don't use fire only to smelt iron, to smelt anything that we want to shape. We use fire to drive everything that we use in terms of power. We also use fire to gather ourselves around the fire to tell and share our experiences. So for me, this is a fundamental study that I am really learning and see how the Osage found it important to trace, you know, even historical. He is showing us that history is very important. We need to know where we come from in order to determine where we are and where are we going to. Thank you.
So, Brother Sam, thank you so much for your input, sharing your thinking. And you remind me of what Brother Carrington once said when we were in chapter 1. He said, he's here, he can say so if I'm lying. He said that when we're reading paragraphs that dealt with physics. And he was saying that he was shocked that Brother Nkrumah was talking about those things. And he didn't realize that those things are in the book. And so thank you very much. I always so as one of the brothers who decided to begin to share consciousnessism through a class, which we started in a physical space before Brother Michael asked us to move online through Zoom. For me, it's always a pleasure to hear brothers and sisters make the kind of comments that you are making. And this goes to the heart of something that others have told Bra the Pigeon, that why are you reading this book? It's so old. It's written so long ago, and why are you reading it? And Brother Pigeon and I keep reminding people that it may have been written in the 60s, but the book is still alive. It has everything that we need in order to fight the struggle today. So my question to you is, so from what you have said in terms of South Africa and Africa, what would you take from this paragraph? I mean, I like everything you've said about the fact we must learn everything, we must study everything, because everything is part of everything. Because there's only one thing, although it manifests in different ways, it's still one thing. So when you are learning different things, you're actually learning how the same thing is transforming itself into many different things. So what do you take from this in the context of South Africa?
Thanks for your comments also, and just from the current situation, we are still faced with a situation here in South Africa where we've got something called the Government of National Unity, and from all of us and our understanding is that we can see that this is, according to me, and I think several other people, this development is far or further driving us further away from our true liberation. We experienced 1994 in South Africa as freedom, but today we have learned that was not freedom, and in fact, the African majority are still oppressed. The workers and the peasants are still oppressed in this country. So what this chapter has, or this reading today has brought to me, is that we need to fundamentally go and find out and study this latest development and be able to put it in proper perspective. I think members will be aware that I belong to the former liberation movement, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, who has always advocated that until the total liberation of the country and the return of the land to the African people, the majority has become reality. That's when we can talk of freedom. But in the current situation, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania have joined the Government of National Unity. So the debate that we need to grapple with, did they betray the cause of the African people? Do they see that they are taking the struggle of the African people even longer? Or can we find something workable within this? So this is the lesson that I'm drawing, that you need to study everything and what transpires and be able to come up with solutions out of this. So my lesson is that I must go and study the GNU and see whether it is proper, that it can bring us nearer or is driving us further. Thank you.
No, thank you very, very much, Brother Sam, Pan-African Congress of Azania. And that was a party that was aligned to the CPP and Kwame Nkrumah at the time. and still is. But Brother Sam, someone would call it what Nkrumah called it, tactical collaboration. It's tactical collaboration at the moment for you. And you are muted, so if you are speaking, we can't hear you.
Yes, and this is the debate within the movement. If I tell you the honest truth is that the movement is divided now, and there's only one person that enjoys victory when a force like the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania is divided. It is our erstwhile oppressors, it is the imperialists. Therefore, that is why I say we need, as progressive now, Pan-Africanists, we need to use these philosophies that we get to go and try and harmonize ourselves as a fighting force. Right. I think this is where my pitch is. Thanks.
Yeah, you'll probably be consoled that you're not the only one. In Ghana, it's the same. Nkrumah's party, the CVP, is also so divided. I hear they are back in court. Brother Kwekwe Sean is here. He can share more light on that when it comes to his turn. Sister Tapua, are you ready now, or should I come back to you later?
I am ready.
Excellent. So share your thinking with us, please.
Thank you. From our reading today, what has caught my attention is that objects are only deceptively serene. They are all delicate balances of opposing forces. This opposing of forces is okay. And then the next one is an object is an attunement of opposite tensions, and without the tensions, there could be no object. It's just brought to mind for me the fact that I think as Africans, we take our liberation as a destination where we are not expecting opposites and positives. So we need to be able, as Africans, to see and appreciate the importance of the positive and negative making up one thing. I was then thinking, we are Pan-Africanists. We have different forms of Pan-Africanism. Some of us view the others as negative or positive, but the fact that we exist in different camps within that broad church means that we are one. In other words, it would be wrong for us to think that for Africa to move forward, the conservatives and the other groups should not exist because they sharpen us. Because of their existence, we are here today. And because of the oppression that we suffered as Africans, we are who we are today and are aspiring to be different. So that when we're looking at when we're looking at colonialism, we are saying this was a force that came to us to exploit us, which for them was positive, but for us was negative. But together we exist in the one world. And together as one, there is not going to be peace for the colonialists, and neither is there going to be peace for us. For us to get along in the world, we need to almost appreciate the basic group dynamics, where if a group is going to function well, you have different people playing different roles. You almost deliberately have the devil's advocate there, whose role might be misconstrued as negative, but is actually there to sharpen things. So when we're looking at our African struggle, and we're talking about the role that the AU is playing, or the OAU was playing, what role did that push everybody else into? Because what I've noticed with the colonialists is, for example, when slavery was coming to an end, they quickly picked up on the positives for themselves in order to then start advocating that slavery must come to an end, when in actual fact it had been coming to an end. There was no other end to it but for it to transform. When colonialism was coming to an end, they quickly stepped in and said, okay, we'll give you your independence. But then they put some spanners in the works because they're working with the system. They're appreciating that there are negatives and positives. Whereas we are being pushed into thinking that our destination has to be a place where there's no opposition. We need to be able to say, okay, this is where we are at now. How do we see this negative? And what is the positive of it? What are we going to do to make sure that it works for what we intend or where we intend to end up? I'm thinking of, for example, the situation between the Sahel, the countries, the countries in the Sahel and the OAU and the African Unity, the AU. How do we perceive that? And how do we work within that frame to achieve what we want as Pan-Africanists? So it's almost like being able to be flexible enough to keep our focus on our goal and look at how we cannot exist without the negatives or the positives, because we are one. Once that goes, then we die. There's no need for Pan-Africanism. Is that what we are hoping to come to? That when we've achieved what we've achieved, then there is serenity. We're dead. And what we're learning here is it's never permanent. We have to keep on keeping on. I think I'll end here.
So do you think that, first of all, are you able to talk a little bit about what Heraclitus said as opposed to applying it to Africa?
The statement reads, according to Heraclitus too, all things are one. In other words, who we are today is because of who they are, the people who put us here. And what we're trying to change is overturn this. It's almost like wrestling for me, because the moment we try to make a move to overturn so that we, as one of the brothers or sisters said, we occupy our rightful position, the implication is someone has to move from that rightful position and occupy the position that we were in. And that points to how we need to understand that. And we need to understand the forces that we are working at. Because what we are saying to Europe, for example, is at some point, you are going to be us. Because just like the Greeks came to Africa to learn and take our ideas to develop themselves, we as Africans have been doing that already. I saw the Indians doing it. I saw the Chinese doing it, going to Europe, learning, going back, and they're reversing the position. And the Americans and the Europeans are aware of it, and they're worried for it because they know what is going to happen. Particularly when we are...
Do you think that we take African state liberation for granted?
Beg your pardon, sorry?
Do you think that Africans take liberation for granted? In other words, do you think Africans see liberation as a destination?
Yes. Yes. Because
what makes you think that? And what is this paragraph telling us? How is this paragraph asking us to look at it differently.
Right. The reason why I'm saying that is particularly for our leadership perceives it as a destination. We achieved our independence. What this paragraph is saying to us is achieving independence does not mean we should sit on our laurels, because that in itself is not a destination. There are forces, opposing forces, that are against that. So as long as we are aware that we need to make sure we are awake and aiming to sustain and establish our independence and keep on sustaining it, which is something that we're failing to do. Because as Africans, when you talk about Africa moving forward and becoming one, the independent African states, the people that are happy with being independent Malawi, independent Zimbabwe, are wondering why we've arrived where we are. And this is what we were fighting for.
Okay.
So it becomes imperative for us to make our leaders understand, make ourselves and our people understand that this is not the destination. We need to move on.
But Sister Tapo, aren't we the leaders? Those that we are calling leaders, aren't they our workers? Aren't they supposed to be our servants, doing what we want as leaders? That it is we who have to, if you like, tell those people what it is we want. And if they don't do it, as happened in Kenya, we march on them and say, look, this is what we want, and this is what we want you to do. I mean, in other words, I'm saying that our concept of who the leader is, I mean, if the African is the source, not the African, but the electorate, the voters, if they are the source of all political and legitimate authority, but isn't that what leadership is? The leader is the one that holds all power and authority, almost like the sovereign.
Right. My perception of the situation is we think we have leaders who are supposed to lead in our interest.
But those that understand. But that's my point. Isn't that the problem, that they are not leaders? They are servants. They are meant to be people who do our bidding. And instead of we seeing ourselves as the leadership, we have made those who are not leaders the leaders. And that's where
we've been deceived. Yes, we've been deceived into thinking that. People have been deceived.
Who deceived us?
Beg your pardon?
Who deceived us?
The colonialists. The colonialists. They knew that they were their power was being usurped. And instead of letting us be and choose our own leaders, they then decided to put their leaders. It's almost like, and then make us think that these are our leaders.
Mr. Tapua, you know that the British never abolished your leaders. They just worked with them. Anyway, thank you for your insightful comments.
Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. But yeah, I want to move to Brother Joseph. But please make your final comments. No, it's fine. Make your final comments and share your final comments, and then we'll go to Brother Joseph. Thank you.
Okay. Leadership is grown. What the colonialists have done is they've made sure that the people who are potential leaders learn from them how to lead for them. I was looking at the advert going on in Kenya about giving young Kenyans the opportunity to go to Germany. And I said, my goodness me. Because what they're doing is they're identifying leadership qualities, people with leadership quality amongst ourselves, and buying us getting us to lead on their behalf. And sometimes we're lured into it without being aware. We're given scholarships and we think that this, oh, I'm lucky. This is what's happening to me. And yet we forget that this is how they're playing the system, making sure that whatever happens, they have leaders who are empathetic and who appreciate or want to put their position in I mean, they stand for them, not for us. And when they come back, we think they stand for us and not for them. And that's to their advantage. Anyway, thank you.
So what is this is a rhetorical question. So what is stopping Pan-Africanists, progressive Pan-Africanists, from also starting their leadership programs? I mean, there are a lot of us living in the West. There are a lot of very rich Africans living in America, Australia, Europe, England. What's stopping us from also setting up our leadership programs and bringing our brothers and sisters over so we can also train them? What's stopping us? Anyway, history teaches us that in certain circumstances, it is very easy for the foreigner to impose his domination on a people. But it also teaches us that whatever may be the material aspects of this domination, it can be maintained only by the permanent organized repression of the cultural life of the people concerned. This is from Amilcar Cabral, put in the chat by Brother Joseph. Brother Joseph, share your thinking with us, please. Brother Joseph is not ready. I'll come back to Brother Joseph. Brother Kweku.
Sorry, I thought I didn't realize I was not unmuted. Sorry, I was speaking and
okay.
I don't know. I was saying that I must. First of all, I'm thankful for.
We'll come to you later. Yes, Brother Joseph, continue. Share your thinking.
Yeah, I said first of all, I want to thank you for reading the stuff I post from Amilcar Cabral, because I've been sharing this around with our people in the Caribbean and elsewhere today. I spend a lot of time sort of reminding our people of that. So I didn't have much time to study the paragraphs, but I mean, I'll talk about it a little. But I would hasten to say that the passage by, or the quote by Amilcar Cabral, I think answers some of the questions. Until we recover our cultural identity, our cultural expression, which we are confused, we are divided. The folks have made us to, for instance, with Haiti, for instance. Haiti's religion is more, I mean, what they call voodoo. Voodoo is over 10,000 years old. Yet, the average person, when they hear the word voodoo, they start thinking about evil and all that kind of stuff. So we dismiss ourselves even before we start. And as Marcus Garvey say, people without confidence is already defeated. So we don't have that level of confidence we have. I want to also, and forgive me if I'm not dealing with the passage directly, but I hope that what I'm saying is helping to broaden our understanding. When the passage, for instance, when I look at South Africa, like the people those folks who are so bent on destroying the priesthood in Greece, the folks in South Africa were so drunk on having been given new roles that they didn't realize that they were being entrapped, because they used the same. And I heard, I think a guy called John Steinbank, on the GATT program, he was saying that, for instance, that a lot of the processes in South Africa is still Greco, Dutch kind of setup. And in our case, Roman, Anglo stuff we dealing with. We are so, I mean, entrapped. We use the language, we use the symbols, we use even the notion of leadership. And let me tell you that. Just give me a couple of extra minutes. I used to do what Brother Makpale did a couple 2 weeks ago for years. And I remember one day I just decided to tell my student, I'm not your teacher. And he was shocked. I say, I'm not your teacher. How do you mean? I say, I'm not your teacher. You have to become your own teacher. Because if I remain your teacher, then I am an authority over you. And that is the problem. We're looking for authority rather than becoming the authority ourselves, the authority of our own self. And then by extent, and then in the process, being able to share ourselves with others. So you have that mass of energy unleashed. So until we feel that dichotomy we have in terms of us and them, there's no us and them, there's only us. And Ubuntu tells us that. So unless we come back to those kind of understanding, the grounding, we'll be held captive. Unfortunately, I mean, we look to the same people for meaning through their language, through their education, through their religion. I mean, distorted religion in the first instance, and everything about it, unless we take serious study. And I like, I agree with some of the things that Sister Apua said. We dismiss each other. For instance, while I'm speaking, I'm sure some people on the continent are thinking, well, he's out there, he's not from here. We have these vestiges from the past, and we have to learn to heal those things if we have to make a leap forward. Now, going back to South Africa, which, you know, the West have been so happy with the success in South Africa. They've already gone back to where, prior to 94, believe it or not, folks may not understand that, so much that they were emboldened to try to work on Venezuela. And I wonder folks in DAC last week, the Global African Congress, who didn't even know, most of the folks didn't even know an election was taking place there. And by Monday, the evil forces was on the move, trying to suppress, trying to undo the will of the people by saying, oh, the election wasn't free and fair. When they have the issue, nobody goes and can champion their cause. They coerce us into it, and we support them. Who is supporting Venezuela? The people who stand to lose a lot are Caribbean people, the blacks in the Africans in Venezuela who have been marginalized for centuries. And we can't see those kind of connections. So we leave everything up to them, you know, and we talk about democracy, and then we keep saying that democracy doesn't work. But let me just stop here by saying what Professor Lumumba said, Pierre-Louis Lumumba said one time. And the next guy from Rwanda, I think he's a businessman. We have to, of course, learn from other people as much as possible. Learn, but he said we have to domesticate our learning. Whatever we have and technology, we have to domesticate. The Chinese did that, Indians do that, but we don't do it. We take everything, laugh, stock, and barrel from them. So they always have a claim on us. Remember the issue that the West had with Japan in the 80s and so on, the 90s about unfair trade practice? They've been calling out that against China recently. Why we can't do something similar to that? I'm not saying exactly as the Chinese. Why we can't go and get stuff and fashion it according to ourselves? I mean, why are we allowing our people all over to be brainwashed in the way they've been brainwashed by the song bites and all the kind of stuff that is, I mean, affecting people's mental and psychological makeup day after day? And this is where I think what Amika Cabral talked about, we must address that. And this is what the folks in the passage had failed to do.
So brother Joseph, you are aware, aren't you, that what is happening in Africa is exactly what Amika Cabral says, that what we have is a permanent organized repression of the cultural life of the people concerned. It isn't that the cultural life of Africa is not there. It's there. But it has been sat on is being dominated by the Western educated Africans, the Africans who love, if you like, the white man more than they love the African culture. It is
Yes,
they who have sat on the
Yes.
continent. So
Yeah.
I'm just drawing your attention to the fact that what Amilcar Cabral is saying is what is happening. And so what we need is to liberate the cultural life of our people. And some have hinted at Ubuntu. I know if Brother Coco is still here. I know he joined some time ago. I hope he's still here. Can talk about that later. So there is, if you like.
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. So very quickly, yeah. So the cultural life of our people is still alive in terms of all the structures. They are still there, but as I said, they have been
but I
dominated.
think
So
we need to go deeper than that, because when we talk about culture, very is a surface thing, but the culture is to deal with the soul of our people. As even as Socrates has hit, the soul of our people, the soul of our people have been damaged, have been wounded.
Yes. So Brother Joseph,
we are groping
so coming
in the
back
destiny.
so coming back to the paragraph we've read, Brother Carrington said when he read, made comment about the fact that even when in nature, I think he said, when two things are fighting, they are still brothers. And I mentioned that in the African culture, there is something called Funtu Miriku, Denchra Miriku, which basically also means that a crocodile with one stomach but two mouths fighting, but they are part of the same thing. So also what I was suggesting is that what we are reading that Heraclitus is saying is still part of our fundamental culture as Africans. The idea that there is opposition in nature, it's still a fundamental part of who we are. And Heraclitus is only telling us what he learned from our forefathers. Can I ask you, where is Brother Nkrumah?
I don't know.
Because he understands these things and he was here sharing them with us. And then he disappeared.
No, you see, I think we are we really need a lot of healing, because this morning I was watching a video from out of Nigeria about this woman who been, in fact, and I wonder what happened to these people, how they've survived, because she said she was born with two genitals. I mean, with two organs, a male and a female. She looks like a woman. She looks like a woman, but she have had two children as a male. She's not acting like a male, but she has, and she said. And I asked myself, all the fuss we making about, I know people condemn Malema because Malema criticized Mussolini and so on, because we've been brainwashed in the European concept of life. Life is one. The other thing about it is that I learned from a biological point of view that all human beings was first, all the origin, the beginning in the womb was first female. That's why we have similar things. The men have breasts and the women have a clitoris. Yet we make a lot of division and so on over people's, manifestation, in terms of the physical. And also, I think that to say, in the ancient, the gods were not separated. They had their consort, or they had their partners. The gods, they were both, as the story with the woman who went looking for her, the parts of her husband and the first immaculate conception in Egypt, the story of that. But yes, we buy all the stupidness.
But Brother Joseph, once again, what you're saying is still with us. The Gan people, Sister Ida is a Gan, Brother Kweku can also bear me witness. The Gan people call God Ata Na Nyongmo, which means God who is both male and female. So I am agreeing with you that these things are fundamental to our culture. But I'm also, I suppose, assuring you that they haven't gone. They are still there. The problem we have, and as you've mentioned, is that the forces, negative forces, have sat on our cultural life. and they don't want it to thrive because they're afraid that if the African is free to be the African, as we hear that the South African creator of apartheid said, that the African is like an elephant. What we need to do is to make sure he doesn't know he's an elephant. Because the day the African elephant, sorry, so the day the African knows he's an elephant, he'll walk all over us. So they try and make sure we don't know we're elephants. Anyway, thank you very much, Brother Joseph. Sister Chisomo, so just so you know, I go male, female, or man, woman. That's what I try to do. So I balance the voices. Sister Chisomo,
Hello.
I want to
Hi.
talk. Yes. What do you think about what we've read?
Well, I wasn't quite reading with you, but I was listening to people's comments.
But it's on the screen. It's been on the screen since.
I know.
Anyway, share your thinking.
So all this thing about fire and water is kind of difficult for me to interpret. But all I was thinking,
there's a big river. But there's a big river in Malawi. There's a river divides east and west Malawi. So what do you mean you don't know what you don't know? What do you mean?
So the water and the fire. So all I was thinking of,
the fire is in the sky. That's the sun. The water is near you. It's in your country. Your country is full of water.
So of course, all I was thinking is the current discussion taking place about this fire because of the Olympics. They were portraying a lot of fire, a lot of fiery images, a lot of red this. So as people are arguing and you're discussing, and I'm thinking, is that the same meaning that has been portrayed in the Olympics? It happened again when they did the Birmingham one, and it's being referred to. The Birmingham one is being referred to, and they're saying that. And there were certain images, a lot of images that now people are translating as Antichrist. What was all that fire about? What was all that? So the person who designed the whole Olympics program was trying to explain what it all meant. But yeah, so as we were discussing this fire stuff, and I'm thinking, could that be the same?
That's interesting.
The same stuff?
Yes.
Because this is the second time
it's Greek.
Happened.
The Olympic fire.
It's Greek. Yeah, the origins of the Olympics is Greek.
It's African, Sister Tapoa. Everything Greek is African. They took it from us.
According to them.
And we disagree.
So in terms of leadership, teaching, and why don't we do it ourselves? And we are taught under the same system. So how do we go out there and translate it into our own? And the fact that the last sister who spoke saying all this leadership business is a Western thing, that they choose the people that will lead on their behalf, which I think is a very true statement. That's why the people are talking about puppets and this and that. They know the people who will push their agenda, the people who will lead for them. That's why our leaders will keep coming here for advice, coming here for money, coming here for everything, and ignoring the rest of us. And when they come back home, for example, in my country, people usually criticize our one, saying, oh, he's always saying, oh, look at what I've done, look at what I'm doing. But the projects are not really his. They are initiated by those people or by the previous somebody. It's not necessarily what he has initiated. But pushing programs, he will stand in a field, oh, we're doing these mega farms, without actually telling us who owns that mega farm. But on the side is standing a white man. So, and they're not government projects. So, but that's how they fool us. And I think, is it Mr. Yusuf, who said if you don't have confidence and if you If you don't have the confidence, you can't. And he said he told his students that I'm not your teacher, teach yourself. But that's how the African way is. Somebody teaches you and you look to your elders to teach you. You have to look for authority. You can't think for yourself. You speak only when you're told to speak. We come here, our experience of coming here to study, when you go in class and you're thinking, when am I going to be told to speak? When am I going to speak? When it's my turn to speak? Not knowing that you just contribute as the conversation goes. And that's why sometimes when we then do the exams or assignments, people often complain, they didn't believe I wrote it. They didn't believe I wrote it, which is true. The teacher is wondering, this woman doesn't speak in class. And because you're not speaking, because you're not showing any confidence, as far as they're concerned, you don't know anything, you have no confidence. And all of a sudden, you're writing something that's first class.
Can I say something, please?
Did you really write that yourself? How many of the experience did you write it yourself, business? Yeah, you wanted to say something.
Thank you, Sister.
No,
Chizono.
I haven't finished. The lady wants to say something.
We need to hear from others. Sorry. So
that's what I'm saying. The speaking is
can
very,
you run
very
up?
limited.
Yeah. Make a final
very
comment.
Limited. You only speak when you're told. That's the problem.
Right. Thank you very much. As a teacher, Tapua, I'm sure we'll have a lot to say. Because in class, you have to
yes.
want to speak. Brother Kweku, can you share your thinking, please? Brother Kweku. That's Kweku Ishon.
Yeah, Brother Christian.
Yes.
I think I'll pass. I'm learning, so let me listen a bit more. Good evening to everybody.
You have to share your thinking, brother. You've learned a lot. You've learned enough.
You let me listen. I'll pass for now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go to Brother Coco, please.
I think Sister Tapua was trying to say something.
Brother Coco, can you speak, please? Sister Tapua, can you hold on,
please? You really want me to say something, isn't it?
Brother Coco, can you share your thinking, please? Sister Tapua will share her thinking soon.
Okay.
Carry on.
This is interesting because today I was talking to one of my brothers. Well, Mr. Mafule's nephew, actually. Mr. Mafule's nephew doesn't believe in the theory that we attribute all our ills to the colonizers or the whites. He says, look within yourself to see where the weaknesses are. So as far as I can see, I see a dichotomy here. There is an internal weakness, and there's also an external, someone who wants to use that internal weakness to exploit you all the time. So that leads to a situation where you find revolutionaries and then counter-revolutionaries. So we have revolutionaries happening now in Burkina Faso, but at the same time, we are worried that there will be people who will be used to unravel that revolution, which is happening so well in the Sahel. So when I see that, I'm seeing two sides of the same coin. They don't realize that they are brothers, and they don't realize that allowing ourselves to be used by people from outside, it's actually against our own nations, our own countries, our own continent in a way.
Sorry to interrupt you. Which part of the reading are you referring to in terms of that argument?
So we are talking about everything is the same. It's just a manifestation of the same thing, but in different forms. And again, the transformation. I mean, there is the part about things being serene, but the fire, the transformation by fire leads to, a disruption, something which looks quite different So I'm just taking that because I thought most of the members had already covered all of this brilliantly.
Brother Koko, you're a teacher, you know. Never assume what your students know. You must always make things explicit. Thank you.
All right. No, I didn't assume. I said my brothers and sisters who have come before me have made very valid points on the basis of that.
Yes.
But my point is when we're talking about things being the same, the dialectic conversion again, I was thinking more of the soil, not just the water. The water, of course, can take many forms, but the soil that we have itself can be bricks in the end. We create bricks out of the soil. We had mud huts and mud and grass huts, which I think were very good for air conditioning. There still are in most parts of our countries, but we don't use them now because we have been told that the European ones, they all look good. And our clothes too, more or less the same thing. We have been convinced that the European ones are the best. There are a lot of things that we need to think carefully about. Ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Is it the right thing to do? Or it can serve the same thing which that European one can serve? And I think it will help to address lots of our ills, because most of the greed is coming because we want to be the white men in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask you a question, but because of time, I will skip that. If there is time, I'll come back and ask you. Let's hear from Sister Tapua, and then we will go to Brother King Mauli. Brother Pigeon has still not spoken yet. So, Sister Tapua, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes. Am I... Sorry, I need to unmute myself.
But you are unmuted already.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I wanted to come in on the quotation from Amilcar Cabral, where it can be maintained. But it also teaches us that whatever may be the material aspect of this domination, it can be maintained only by the permanent, organized repression of the cultural life of the people concerned. I would like to comment there on the permanent. In a lot of our children, some of them are so permanently dominated, they actually don't know what African is anymore because of the organized repression. And the organized repression emanates from the education system. Because like I've said before, when the colonialists go to a place, they'll get the children, because they know that once they get the children and alienate them from the cultural life of the people, they've won. And in a lot of instances, we now have people who think that in an African culture, children are not allowed to speak. I beg to differ. Because it's the colonial system that came in and made and referred to us. I mean, we still have people going, boy this, boy that, to an elderly African man who's called a boy, particularly in Southern Africa. Permanently placed figures of authority in our communities as children, and therefore they were not allowed to speak. So this idea that we are not allowed to speak as Africans is not ours. I come from a culture where if you have something important to say, people sit in a circle, and from the oldest to the youngest, and we pass whatever it is that one person is saying it goes round the circle and everybody has a say. In our chieftainships and traditional authorities, people sit at court and everyone has a right to speak. I actually enjoy watching some of the processes that go on in the traditional courts because the village is invited. No one is alienated. Everybody can make a contribution. But at the end of it, the person who's given the position by the king or by the chief then concludes and summarizes what the village says. So what we need is to realize that the West aims to permanently organize and repress our culture. Because until we acknowledge that that's what's happening, we will not be able to redress it or change it. Therefore, we need to do it. I've taught in the West, and I was surprised at the differences between how a teacher is perceived in the West and how a teacher is perceived in Africa. In Africa, the teacher takes after the colonial teacher who knew everything and who was there as an authority. But in the West, we're talking about cooperative learning, we're talking about pupils sharing, we're talking about pupils discussing, we're talking about how everybody's ideas are important. Whereas when we come here, we're talking about, in Africa, we're talking about prefects suppressing everybody else, imposing power, and it's just so shocking when you've been through the two systems. So the one system in Africa was meant to pacify us, was meant to make us think that the white man has authority. And once he left, the people with authority amongst us, the prime ministers, the presidents, the village heads, the teachers, are supposed to be bowed to, just like we did with the white person. And yet where they come from, you then have freedom of expression. You have kids learning to discuss and learning to disagree amicably. You have learning to come to a consensus, which is what we lack. This is how we end up having people chopping each other because they belong to different political parties, and we can't just respect someone for being different and holding different opinion. So my point is, we need to understand that part of our culture has been polluted, and we've been told who we are by some people because they want to permanently repress and organize us. So when we think through our culture and we think through what our elders are saying, we need to understand the processes as well that then helped us to come to this position. And maybe in other cultures, I don't know all African cultures, but my assumption was in an African culture, we listen to each other. In a village, you listen, everybody listens. Otherwise, people realize that we've got to coexist, we've got to live together. Thank you very much for giving me the time to speak.
Yeah, that's okay. Sister Satapua, what you've said, interesting. But I think what you've done is to give us a presentation on education. So what I think you should do is put those thoughts together in some slides, and let's make a Saturday discussion.
All right.
Because if I want to respond to everything you've said, we will go to 10 o'clock. Oh yes, because there's so much there that I can give you counter examples of, even here. The Scandinavian education system is different from the British education system. In Scandinavia, as you may or may not know, teachers are regarded the same light as doctors. That's how they respect teachers. Whereas in England, teachers are doormats. Okay. So there's a lot of what you're saying. So I think what we need to do is to have a separate session on education and colonialism or something like that.
Okay.
Brother Pigeon, I know you are listening. Let's come up with a topic so that we can have a proper discussion on this. Let's now. So thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Let's now go to Brother Pigeon.
Oh, greetings, everyone. Hope you can hear me, Brother Kwame.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, the first thing is the Greek philosopher was so bent on destroying the foundation of priesthood, aristocratic powers. And what comes to my mind, have we, the African, also been so bent in this destruction of priesthood, aristocratic powers? And are they still existing? And to me, it's that priesthood, aristocratic power still exists in Africa up to date. But the biggest part is here that they paid little attention to social growth. And can it be still true? Yes, majority of us in African setup today, still so many of us don't even care about our social growth. They are preparing too much of the giving everything to the pastors and the bishops. The bishops and pastors drive big vehicles. We go back home on foot and we are being told that you're investing on heaven. So it's one way or the other. Is like many of us even do not up to date still take attention to social growth as a people, but also still struggle with these priestly aristocratic powers, almost what was by the early Greeks. And the next thing that comes to my mind is this aspect of immortality of the soul, as opposed to belief of religion. Infinity. It reminds me when we talk of infinity. You remember infinity in chapter 1, the immortality of the soul. And I think this also believe in more of in African reincarnation setup, that people don't die, they're reborn again. They're always being reborn again. They come back again. And like this religious aspect that you are sent to heaven and you don't come back, like you go back there in heaven. But in our setups, there's more of immortality of our souls and the survival and the existence of our souls. But I'm also now getting here to which says that according to Heraclitus, 2, all things are one. And this brings us one to what we've been talking about, matter, that everything comes from the same matter. But when they talk of fire, the fundamental thing, I want to ask myself, and maybe ask members here from my thinking, where do fire come from? Because when you see fire in the basis of the categorical conversion, is the fire the primary conversion, or is it a secondary conversion? And the fire is that...
Yeah, can Brother Pigeon, can Brother Carrington answer that from physics? Brother Carrington, what is fire? So that Brother Pigeon can continue his discussion.
Fire is combustion. Combustion is the oxidation of any material which releases heat. So that is fire. Wood burns by combining with oxygen. The usual high school chemistry. That's the origin of fire. Yeah.
But the sun is not wood or anything.
So yes, exactly. So the sun burns, quote unquote, and astrophysicists like using this word, by combining hydrogen using nuclear processes. This is called nuclear fusion. And this combination of hydrogen into helium and later on into carbon is what is called nuclear fusion and is exothermic. It releases heat.
Fission or fusion?
Fusion.
Not fission. It's not breaking. Okay,
it's not breaking, it's joining. Yeah.
Hydrogen and
just like when you clap your hands, it releases energy.
Okay, brother Pigeon, I hope that is helpful.
So then heat is a product of fire.
Exactly. Heat is a product of fire.
Heat is a product of fire.
Yes.
Then I'll see this fire on the basis as which you were seeing water before, because you said water is also a combination of hydrogen and oxygen, which means then fire is also a combination of both. Then these matters are actually, to me, I will go back to what you call constructionism. They are actually a construction of a product. They undergo what you call constructionism to come up with fire or come up with water, which means then they can be reductionism. We can reduce them back to those components we are talking about. Then if this is the case, why does it then suffer transformation into other things? Because fire can then be converted into heat. And this is where I don't understand when they say that, but fire, the fundamental thing, suffers transformation into other things.
Yeah, but that's it. You just mentioned it, Brother Pigeon. It turns itself into heat.
But why does it say it suffers transformation into other things?
Sorry? And the heat, Brother Carrington come in here, the heat, if it's a car, the vehicle moves. If it's a train, It moves. An aircraft, it moves because of the fire and the heat. And then in the human body, there's combustion. Yeah, there's combustion in the human body, and then and so on and so forth. Yeah. So that is it.
Heat has a mechanical effect. Heat causes gases to expand. It causes things to move around. Heat has a mechanical effect. That's how it is important.
Without wasting my time because of time, permit me also to say that this aspect of talking about instability, and I only concern on, and it is this instability which makes transformation possible. So it means transformation do not take place in a stable situation. Which means transformation of our people only have to take place in stable position. And you see, yes, and we end up with this last part where they say objects can only deceptively serene and the delicate balance of opposing forces. So it means that no matter how things are assumed to be good, it's actually at equilibrium that makes it appear to be serene. But at equilibrium doesn't mean there's no negative or positive forces. It arriving at equilibrium is actually trying to be the center of forces. It's not actually a unity of forces, but it's the center of forces. Still mean that there are forces that are moving in dialectical conditions, as you're saying here. But the last part that then makes my attention to be more of, that put my attention is that an object is attunement of opposite tensions, and without the tension, there cannot be object. So hold on, I get it. So without attention, let's see this object being progress, let's see this object being development, let's see this object being anything else, which means without tension, it cannot be that development. And that's what I read in the last section of this. Thank you.
Yeah, Brother PG, let me add something that we might find useful. So there was one of the first leaders of the Ashimota College or Ashimota School in Ghana, called Dr. Agre, who inspired Nkrumah. He got Nkrumah into Ashimota to train, to be a teacher. Now, Dr. Agre, as you know, was also in Dr. Agre. Anyway, he used to say that that we are like the white keys and the black keys on the piano. That if you play the white keys alone, you can never get a nice music. And if you play the black keys alone, you never get good music. You can only get a good tune if you play both the black and the white keys. And that was his way of explaining what you're saying.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Well, and at that point, Brother Dekin Maulia, sorry, we will not have time for you to speak, but hopefully you speak next week. Brother Pigeon, that is it. Can you bring the meeting to a close? And also, can you make any announcements there are for next week, what we're doing next week, and also the class and so on and so forth? Thank you.
Okay, permit me recognize the presence of Sister Marlin here. Maybe you didn't know Sister Marlin was around.
I knew, but because of time, yeah.
Okay, and also greetings to Brother Kweku. He's a long time, and I appreciate his attendance to this group. He has been getting our broadcast messages all that long, but he always tries his best to be here. So thank you, Brother Kweku, for that. Also, your attendance at this time.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to say that we are actually doing well in terms of sharing our recordings, just that we are not sharing this knowledge further, as this knowledge is very vital here. Why don't we just spare a minute to share it with our brothers when we share our recordings? Also learn if they're not able to attend here physically. My little encouragement. But on this Saturday, we are trying to look at the US election. I know everybody's here, and I know Brother Kwame will give us why we should look at it, on what angles we look at it in regards to the unification and liberation of Africans, because there's what is at play. So we'll be looking at this. We are actually, I will be requesting anybody who is interested to actually want some time to do a short presentation on that, to get in touch with me. But we'll be having a candid, open conversation, but guided by philosophy and ideology in that conversation. That's what you're looking at in this Saturday. And also, I don't think there's much to say at this particular moment, Brother Kwame, unless there's any other update you want to give. But I have to say for now.
No, not from my end, except Brother Joseph, I think, one of the presenters on what is happening in America. Yeah.
Okay. So everybody, I'll do a post. I won't put the name of anybody in that poster, but to be multiple speakers who want to speak, just get in touch with me. Let me know if you need a 10 or 15 minutes so that we can slot that presentation properly. So without much ado, comrades, permit me to appreciate your presence and all your times and all the things you do for us. So let's meet again this Saturday and next Thursday, don't miss. We'll pick it from here, where we've left it moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.